So what I'll tell you is like, if you have this thing that you're passionate about, it's starting to grow, you love it, and you have a genuine desire to share this service or this good with others, it's time to go all in. It's time to go all in. And I'll tell you, for the individuals that I've seen that are passionate and diligent and hardworking, and they do decide to go all in on a business, from my perspective, from what I have seen personally, 9 times out of 10, they do great. So don't be afraid to go all in. Trust me when I tell you the odds are better than what you're going to experience at a Vegas blackjack table. Good afternoon, veteran entrepreneurs. This is the Warrior Rising podcast, episode 11, Office Hours. I am your host, Coach Bunn. Warrior Rising is the veteran service organization dedicated to veteran entrepreneurship. You can join our programs at warriorrising.org. Programs start with the Warrior University, which is a simple self-paced modules on business plan creation. Of course, we have continued coaching and mentorship calls to include masterclass calls. And then, of course, we have our Warrior University, sponsored and hosted in partnership with Grand Valley State University. Qualified individuals get the opportunity to submit their business plans, right, for consideration for attendance at one of our national business showers. This year, we've got a couple great ones coming up in Salt Lake City, Detroit, Michigan, Atlanta, Georgia, in conjunction with the Military Influencer Conference, and of course, our final business shower of the year in Washington, D.C. You can apply to attend and pitch your business with other veteran entrepreneurs and compete for your opportunity to win grants in upwards of $20,000. Business showers, of course, are our flagship events. But whether you're just starting your business or you're well along your way, there's 100% a place for you in the Warrior Rising tribe. Once again, head over to warriorrising.org to find out more and participate in your programs. I wanted to kick off today's podcast by acknowledging that it is Suicide Awareness and Suicide Prevention Month. September is National Suicide Awareness Month. It's a touchy subject, and this is, of course, an acute issue inside the veteran community, specifically with individuals that have participated in the global war on terror. We saw this really huge uptick in veteran suicide after the global war on terror kicked off, and of course have seen acute issues in both the active duty and veteran communities as it pertains to suicide. We had 20 plus years of protracted asymmetric warfare across multiple fronts with an all-volunteer army. And of course, suicide has also become a prevalent issue in the private sector as well, specifically with white males, which I think is such a jarring statistic, because to be born white and in America gives you an absolute leg up, when measured up against individuals across the world, right? It's such a privilege to be born in the United States, and if you're born tall, white, and with a full head of hair, you have an absolute leg up. Statistically, you have an absolute leg up against your peers, both worldwide and in the United States. But all demographics aside, veteran suicide is a huge issue, and it's an issue that I've personally spent a ton of time thinking about. I've often thought about what the root cause is, what the potential solutions might be, and then, of course, how it's impacted me directly, both in terms of individuals that I've served with directly, and just kind of, the broader degrees of separation between myself and individuals in the military that have taken their own life. I will tell you, I think, by far and wide, the solution for veteran suicide is probably more simple than we might think, right? And the solution probably looks very similar to the solution for general mental health issues. I think, individuals need to make sure that they're, drinking water, right? Eating whole foods, getting 8 hours of sleep, working out 3 to 5 times a week vigorously, and spending as much free time as possible, building strong connections in their communities and with their families, right? I say all that as if it's so simple to accomplish those things broadly, knowing that everything that I just talked about takes a lot of deliberate hard work. But I will tell you, if you have the opportunity, right, drink your water, exercise 3 to 5 times a week, get good sleep, tell your wife or your husband or your kids that you love them, and do your best to make lasting friendships and connections inside your community. And it'll do a lot of good in your life. Of course, if you are hurting or you know somebody that's hurting, don't be afraid to reach out. If you see something, say something. There's dozens, hundreds, if not thousands of resources inside the veteran community to help combat and prevent veteran suicide. The same is true for the private sector. You can dial 988 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and have an opportunity to talk to a crisis intervention specialist. And if you as a veteran are thinking about hurting yourself or others, you can walk right into the VA, let them know that you're having ideations that are no good. And I'm here to tell you, regardless about what individuals might think their experience in the VA might be, good, bad, or indifferent, if you walk into a physical VA and you speak to a person and you tell them that you're thinking about hurting yourself or others, I'm telling you right now, they're going to give you all the help that they possibly can muster right then, right there. So I thought it was important to address that, being that September is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. And of course, if you see something, say something. If you're hurting or you know somebody that's hurting, please don't hesitate to reach out. One of the bravest things that you can ever do is acknowledge that you're vulnerable and ask for help. That takes real courage. So with that being said, let's dive right in. Today, I wanted to talk about hard decisions, things that are difficult to do as a veteran entrepreneur, as a founder, as a business owner. And I'm going to kind of talk about them in precedence, right? And try and talk to them consecutively in the order in which they might appear or happen. And bear with me, take the journey with me, and we're going to talk about this for about the next 30 minutes or so. The first thing that I want to talk about, the first challenge that you might really encounter that's difficult, it's going to put you in a hard spot in terms of decision making, is when to go all in as a business. I have had an opportunity in my travels to kind of connect with venture capitalists, right? Venture capitalists, right, are individuals that run organizations that usually have a large fund, like anywhere between $10 million to $100 million, specifically with the intent to invest in businesses that will provide a return, usually on a timeline that looks like 3 to 5 years for the majority of venture capital organizations, right? I've had the opportunity to speak with fund managers and managing partners inside those organizations. And one of the number one things that they all say when they're vetting organizations for capital investment, one of the first things that they look for is that individual is all in on the business, meaning they don't have anything else going on to distract them professionally from the business that they're starting. And why is that, right? And it's like, hey, listen, if you're coming to me and asking me for a capital investment and I work for a venture capital fund of some variety, my job is to invest in businesses that will be successful and provide me with a return on investment, right? And I want to know that you got skin in the game, brother. I want to know that you give a shit. And one of the number one ways to articulate that professionally is by having no other professional pursuits whatsoever. You're like, hey man, all my eggs are in this basket. It's either this or I'm destitute. Nothing says I'm invested in this like saying, hey, I've invested all my personal and professional assets in this venture. That person is serious. That person is serious. Now, I know that's probably a little bit of a controversial thing to say, particularly in this day and age where there's the rise or the advent of the serial entrepreneur. And I've told people this before, whenever somebody says they're a serial entrepreneur, I'm like, well, that's serial bullshit. And anytime I've ever met anybody that's got they're like, yeah, I'm involved in like 10 to 12 businesses right now. I'm like, well, I'm sure you're providing each of them with, 10% of your damn attention and professional effort. And I'm guilty of this too. I've worked on multiple professional efforts at one time throughout my professional career. And I will tell you, anytime that I've done that, at least one or two of them have suffered to a degree. And I've even had to have very professional discussions with individuals that have retained me, whether it was as a consultant or as a stakeholder, where they were like, hey man, like you seem distracted. And as a result, at different times throughout my professional career, I've had to really narrow my focus and my scope. But I'll tell you, using my gym as an example, when I transitioned from the military, I put all my eggs in that basket. This is a CrossFit gym. I'm not refining uranium over at Cigar City CrossFit, right? I'm not building rockets. I'm just like teaching people how to air squat and shit. But I will tell you, I gave that gym several years of my absolute full and undivided attention. I was the first person there in the morning and I was the last person there at night. And as a result, that gym has been very successful. And it wasn't until I knew to a certainty that I had all the processes inside that organization systemized in such a way that I felt confident that I could hand it over, that I actually started to step away and started to pursue other professional efforts. And on top of that, I had to make sure that I had absolutely airtight employees that were the absolute best at what they did, professionals that I trusted and vetted in some cases for years in advance before I felt confident that I could hand that over to them. And I've seen a lot of different CrossFit gyms that have had part-time owners. They're like, I'm a firefighter, or I'm a first responder, or, I have this side gig and this hustle. And I've watched them all go out of business over the past few years, right? And I'm proud to say that inside Tampa, I think my gym is the longest running with the same owner in the same location, probably. And I think a lot of that has to do is I spent a significant amount of my time and energy ensuring that I was all in on that business. And I just use CrossFit as an example, but I think many businesses are like that. If you're not willing to give it your full attention, you're not fully committed to its success. So there's going to be a point in time where you're going to have to make a decision about going all in. And I know it's risky. You're probably going to have to take a pay cut. It's probably going to be risky, not just for you. You might have family members. You might have a wife and kids. But I will tell you, it is rare, I think, or it's from my personal opinion or from my perspective, I just haven't met a ton of people where they had a business that was continuing to grow, this thing that they loved and they were passionate about. They went all in on it, and then it subsequently failed, right? Not in an immediate way, at least, right? That stuff usually came way after that. And what I'll tell you is, if you go all in on a business and it does subsequently fail, yes, that's still a failure, but it's no different from losing another job, right? If you got fired from Progressive Auto Insurance, people are like, oh man, what a bummer, dude. That's how it happens. People get laid off. And people just seem to act like that's, the normal way of the world. Conversely, when you start a business, and listen, how the business does is a direct result of what you have done or failed to do. But it seems more personal, and it seems like people attribute a higher degree of responsibility and guilt for going out of business when that business is yours. And listen, I think it's important that, like, if you have a business and it fails, it's no different from getting laid off from a regular job, right? Yeah, you're going to take it home with you. Yeah, it's going to keep you awake at night. Yeah, it's going to be probably a little bit more personal. But at the end of the day, what it means financially and what it means long-term is equivalent of getting laid off, which happens all the damn time. So what I'll tell you is like, if you have this thing that you're passionate about, it's starting to grow, you love it, and you have a genuine desire to share this service or this good with others, it's time to go all in. It's time to go all in. And I'll tell you, for the individuals that I've seen that are passionate and diligent and hardworking, and they do decide to go all in on a business, from my perspective, from what I have seen personally, 9 times out of 10, they do great. So don't be afraid to go all in. Trust me when I tell you the odds are better than what you're going to experience at a Vegas blackjack table. So like I said, this is kind of going to go consecutively or by precedence, but another really difficult decision to make as a business owner is when to delegate, right? Is when do you got to start hiring people to do stuff in the organization that's traditionally belonged to you? Once again, I'm going to use my CrossFit gym as an example. It's the thing I've been doing the longest, so I feel most comfortable and confident talking about it. But back when we first opened the gym, we bought this thing that we called the Zamboni. It's like a $3,000 auto scrubber. Thing's an absolute piece of shit. Anything that's required to run on electricity and water is going to have like problems. You know what I'm saying? And, this thing had this battery that you had to charge up and weighed like 30 pounds, and it spits water everywhere. It's got a scrubber on it. And it picks up a bunch of hair and DNA off the ground. And you got to like empty the thing. The thing was horrible. It was more finicky than a 1990 Ford Ranger. I had to pop the hood and tinker around with it anytime I started it up. And there was only like 2 people in the organization that truly knew how to maintain and run the thing. For years, or probably not years, but probably for the first year at least, I was probably the only person that ran that auto scrubber. I was the only person that cleaned the floors. And then after a while, we started to delegate it out to my coaches, and they hated it. And the reason is because they didn't get hired. They didn't start working at a CrossFit gym to clean floors and empty trash cans. They got hired at a CrossFit gym. They applied. They wanted to teach at a CrossFit gym. So they wanted to teach CrossFit. They wanted to share this thing that they were passionate about with other people. So of course, if I asked them to empty out a trash can or to run an auto scrubber, that is not what they were thinking about when they were sitting down in the interview at the gym. They were thinking about teaching somebody to get their first pull up or to lose 30 pounds or to compete in the CrossFit games, these aspirational things. They were not thinking about running the auto scrubber. So of course, when I started having my coaches do things like clean the bathrooms and run the auto scrubber, they did an absolutely horrific job. So here I was stuck again with the auto scrubber. I'd be like Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. All my friends are down at one of these like, one of these food truck rallies where you essentially just like stand around in a 110-degree parking lot and pay like $30 for tater tots with bacon bits on them. And I'm having a miserable time cleaning my floors over at the gym. I finally decided, I was like, damn, dude, like what are my billable hours? What should I actually, what is my time worth? And at the time it was probably like $100 an hour. And I was like, dude, is this worth $100 an hour? Like I could be personally training somebody for this right now and I could be making $100, but instead I'm just cleaning a floor. And I did the math. How much would I pay somebody to do this? And it was about $20. And I went out and I found a janitor and then I paid him $20 an hour to do things like run my auto scrubber, to do things like empty my trash cans and clean my bathrooms. Did they do the job that I would want them to do? Did they do the job in the same way that I would have? Absolutely not. Definitely not. Nobody's ever going to do the job that you want to do, right? They're never going to do it to your satisfaction, nor should they if you're the owner, right? Because if you're the owner, your satisfaction requires perfection. Obviously, a paid employee is not going to deliver perfection, but did they deliver something that made my customers satisfied? Did people feel that the floors were clean enough that they could lay on it to do some sit-ups, get up and brush themselves off and walk out the organization without feeling that it was completely disgusting? Could they use the bathrooms without having to plug their nose or, hover above the toilet? Hey, everybody's good to go. They'll get butt naked in my bathroom and sit right down on the toilet, no questions asked. We're good. They did just good enough of a job, right, for the amount that I paid them. And then this freed me up to go do the things that I needed to do, right? The things that it could actually generate wealth for both myself and the organization. It's difficult to come to that decision, right? To one, establish how much you're worth, and 2, to delegate tasks out to somebody else knowing that they're not going to do as good a job as you. But at some point in the organization, you're going to have to do it. Conversely, I had one of our veteran entrepreneurs reach out. They worked in software, right? They work in software and software services. And they approached us on a coaching and mentorship call, bunch of people on the call. And they said, hey, listen, I'm getting ready to bring on somebody that's got significant amount of expertise. We need their expertise. We need their experience. And they're also a good operator. And listen, they want equity in the company. And you know what? I think I need to make them the CEO. I think they have more experience than me. And I think they're going to be better at scaling the organization. Dude, I couldn't have been prouder of that individual for talking about that out loud. They were right. They were right. Listen, I've consulted and worked for various organizations at the director, pseudo VP level. And now, I'm in the equivalent of, I guess, a C-suite position as the deputy executive director of a veteran nonprofit. But I tell people all the time, the sweet spot for me in an organization is from around like 0 to 30 million, right? Once an organization gets beyond that, once it's like more than 30 employees, once they're making more than like $30 million a year, my brothers and sisters in Christ, that is outside of my expertise. I don't know what I'm doing. And if I find myself in a position where all of a sudden I'm managing more than 30 employees or more than $30 million annually, dude, I'm either going to hire somebody else to do it because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. or I'm going to hire somebody to teach me how to do it. I'm going to hire like an actual coach or a mentor. And when I say coach or mentor, I'm not saying like my homie that I get on the phone with before I'm getting ready to make a decision about the toppings on my next deep dish pizza. I'm talking about like, I'm going to pay somebody from a professional organization to tell me what the hell to do, right? Because I'm going to be lost in the sauce. I think being able to make the decision as a founder or business owner to say like, hey, I'm out of my depth. I can't do this anymore. I don't have the expertise. And to either hire your replacement or hire somebody to coach or mentor you. My God, what an incredible decision, right? To be that humble, to be that self-aware, and to make a decision on behalf of your organization that will positively impact you and your employees and your consumers. God, man, it's like that's like the apex of responsibility. So, when to delegate tasks and when to hire somebody to do stuff that you don't want to do anymore and that your employees don't want to do is super important to be able to recognize that, to free up your personal time and to know that they're not going to be able to do as good of a job, but they're going to do good enough so that you can continue to scale and do good works is important. But man, being able to identify when you're out of your depth and to pay somebody either to do your job for you or to teach you how to do your job, I think is such an incredible move. That's a baller ass move. And I'm telling you, I've worked for some founders, man. I've worked for some CEOs that were their own worst enemies, right? And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, damn, they would sometimes ask on calls. I could be like an all personnel call, and they'd be like, man, we gotta revisit our strategy. This is the direction we're going, and blah, blah, blah. And, I've been in organizations where the entire team knew that the problem was the CEO. And that individual just didn't know, was not self-aware enough to know that they were the problem. So, if you're a founder, if you're a CEO, talk to your employees, right? Talk to your confidants, talk to your peers and your subordinates, right? Inside the organization, and have honest conversations and be like, hey man, how do you think you're going to regularly provide your employees with critical feedback? Don't be afraid to ask them for some. Don't be afraid to ask them for some as well. And listen, if one of your employees or multiple of your employees look you dead in your face and be like, dude, I think right now the problem is you. I think maybe you need more bandwidth. Maybe you need to step away. Maybe you need to promote somebody else. Don't take it as an insult, but instead take it home, think it over, and really consider if that might be the best move, right? Just because you're not the CEO, just because you're in charge, doesn't mean you're not the founder, right? You're still going to get that money. You still got founder in your title. You're still the person that built that thing, right? But you just might need to hand it over. Don't forget, Steve Jobs got fired from Apple. He wasn't even the CEO. He was one of the founders, but they had him running around working on weird projects and stuff like that. And he got shit canned. And exactly 12 years later, they hired him back as the interim CEO. And he went on to become, the permanent CEO and made Apple, what is probably one of the greatest companies to ever exist, and probably produced the greatest consumer good, the iPhone, the greatest consumer good to ever exist on the market. Probably second only to the Hershey's bar, freaking Marlboro cigarettes, and Coca-Cola Classic. You know what I'm saying? Those are probably the only consumer goods that have had more velocity and been more broadly purchased than the iPhone. But it's like right now, it's like, dude, it's like the iPhone is like the benchmark consumer good. It's incredible. But don't forget that. It's like Steve Jobs got fired from his own damn company. He was a founder just to be rehired 12 years later. So just because you're not ready now doesn't mean you're not going to be ready forever. But don't be afraid to step down, even if it's in the interim, so that you can get somebody who knows what they're doing to come in there and wreck shop on your behalf, or at a minimum, just teach you what to do. Just teach you what to do. So on the same note, it's like, when do I hire people? When do I hire people to replace me? When do I hire people do shit that I don't want to do? Another thing that's really important to know is when to fire people. Like, here's the deal, man. If you're thinking about firing somebody, it's probably already too late. You probably need to fire their ass. It's probably time to fire them right now. Now, hold tight. I don't want everybody to go out there on a firing spree all of a sudden because I just said some weird shit on a podcast. But what I do want you to do is I want you to take personal stock in how much runway your employees have. Being an entrepreneur is weird, particularly when you start to hire people, because you're hiring people to fill a position that you personally probably will never. Dude, I'll never work for anybody again in my life, right? I'll for sure work with people. If I have the opportunity to have agency inside of an organization, if my my decisions and my input have strategic impact, I'm good. If I need to have agency inside of an organization, or else I want no part of it whatsoever, right? I'm never just going to be somebody's employee. I'm going to be somebody's partner. But the fact of the matter is like if you own your own organization, you're going to have people that are just employees. And it's counterintuitive because you're like, dude, personally, I would never be somebody's employee. But hey, but you, buddy, yeah, you're going to be my employee. Well, look, dude, like people have seasons. And I like the word seasons because it infers that this is an ephemeral thing. It's temporary. There are seasons in people's lives where they're just going to be employees. I think the days where somebody's going to be a company man are kind of gone. People are kind of like free agents. The chances of you hiring somebody right when they get out of high school or college and keeping them employed for over 20 years and then watching them retire as a result of some 401k thing you invested in is not likely. That's not like you will probably, there are probably few founders or business owners out there that are like, yeah, I remember the day I hired him and I remember the day he retired. Like, I bet you that doesn't happen a lot anymore. So recognize, like, as a founder, as a business owner, you're going to be hiring people and you're hiring them for a specific amount of time. And like how much time that is, it's up to you to identify. It's up to you to identify. You need to look at this person and be like, how much runway do I have? How long is this person going to be with me? And I'm going to tell you, people want to do two things. People need to do two things while they're an employee. They either need to be earning or learning. Ideally, you got them doing both, okay? The second that they stop earning and the second that they stop learning, you're in trouble. Everybody's in trouble, right? That person's now a flight risk. And it's up to you as an employer, as a founder, as a business owner, to create these opportunities for those individuals to both learn and earn, right? Give them opportunities for progressive growth inside the organization. Give them opportunities to continuously learn so that they can better themselves, right? And if they can't grow inside the organization, at a minimum, they need to grow adjacent to the organization. Maybe they got a side hustle. Maybe they're a strategic partner. Who knows, right? Who knows? It's difficult to say depending on what your business and business model is. But the second that that individual is just camping out, the second that they're not on a glide path that gives them the opportunities for growth and they're not really learning much of anything and they're just kind of twiddling their thumbs day to day, holy shit, that you're getting ready to lose them. And look, you have a decision to make. You can wait for that person to violently exit on their own timeline and without warning, or you can identify that like, dude, hey, I've noticed that you're just kind of camping out. I get it. You're getting a paycheck. You're doing well. You're doing everything you're supposed to. But like, I want to know what you have planned for the future. And like, listen, if your plan for the future doesn't involve working for me, no big deal. But like, let's get your resume squared away. Let's start looking for you. Let's find a replacement and let's train them and let's like make a good transition here. Like, let's figure something out. And anytime I've had both, I've had individuals where I identified that I was like, damn, they got runway on them. Or they identified their own runway and they're like, I think I'm only going to be here for about another year, dude. And we were able to kind of create a transition that was gradual and made sense and found a replacement, codified the things they had done, made sure it was easy to hand over. And then I've had people that have violently exited. Dude, option one all day. What are we talking about? Obviously, you don't want somebody to violently exit the organization as a result of them needing to be terminated, or they just woke up one day and like embroiled in personal crisis and were like, I got to get the fuck out of here. Like, option one all day, man. I want that person to recognize that they're on their way out the door, right? Or I recognize it. We have a professional discussion about it. And then we're able to figure out a transition that makes sense for everybody. Boy, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. And then kind of in closing here, right? In closing here, as we're talking about it, well, let me put a bow on that real fast. Realizing when individuals need to transition out of the organization and realizing when they need to be replaced, right? Is I think a fantastic thing. But I think it's also good to mention, if you do have a large organization or an organization that's at scale and you need to start firing people as a result of, essentially there's no longer, like if there's an aspect of your business that no longer is providing value to the consumer, i.e. those employees are no longer needed, or you have to make employee cuts for financial reasons, right? What I'll tell you is, and I'll kind of leave it at this, is you need to cut deeper and wider than you think. You need to cut deeper and wider than you think. The last thing you want to do is start consolidating positions inside of an organization because they're no longer needed or because it's too expensive to maintain. And you have to continually whittle away at that group, right? Like you don't want to hire, or you don't want to like fire 3 people and circle back 3 months later and fire 3 more people. Like you don't want to, sit there and watch these people get whittled away at, right? And now they're all like feeling like they're on Survivor Island or some shit like this. Everybody's worried about their job. Like the best way to go about it is to cut wide and cut deep. If you have to lay people off, that way you don't have to do it again. And that way you can look everybody dead in the face that's still with the company. Say like, hey, listen, I know you just watched a couple of your homies walk out the door with cardboard boxes, but like, hey, this is why we had to do it. And I want you to know that your jobs are secure. And I want you to know that I went wide and I went deep with the specific intent to ensure that everybody else, I provided both fiscal and common sense safety for all the rest of the positions inside this organization. And I'll kind of leave you with that. And that's usually for organizations that are at scale. And also, like, listen, honestly, if you've got like more than 30 employees, you need to start a podcast that I can listen to for advice, not the other way around. Probably. I don't know. Maybe somebody who's, I don't know what you're doing. You got a franchise, or maybe you got a couple F-45s and you want to listen to me talk about doing thrusters or some shit. And then finally, like the last kind of thing that I want to kind of talk about is when to sell, or when to just fold up shop. And I hate to say this, when to quit. Listen, as an organization, when to sell. Look, if you've been cash flow positive for more than 3 to 5 years and you're no longer passionate about this thing that you're doing, you're finding that your personal and professional interests are veering away from the business. You fiscally are doing well. You're paying all your bills. You've got the big 2-story white corner house with all the chickens and the dogs and all this kind of stuff, and you're ready to chuck deuces. Or you find that you've hired people to do the majority of the roles and responsibilities that used to belong to you, and you're also accumulating the majority of the profits in the organization back towards the employees, meaning that you're not making a ton of money. You're comfortable, but you're just like really not doing much in the organization. I think that's probably a good opportunity to evaluate the business and figure out a way to sell it and go start the next thing. And that might not become immediately apparent, right? And I'll tell you, for me as a gym owner, there's been a couple opportunities where I've become busy and my professional interests have wandered off vastly, but I've always circled back on the gym. But I have seen that there have been more than one occasion across the last 10 years where I've been like, damn, I could sell this gym. And what does that like mean to me? It means probably I do need to figure out a way to transition out, right? I probably do. If I've been considering selling this thing on more than one occasion, it's probably time for me to chuck deuces, right? That's weird. This is almost like a confession. Like, I'm ready to sell my gym. Like, apply here now to own a CrossFit gym. Spoiler, it's a huge pain in the ass. I tell people all the time, don't start a CrossFit gym, don't start a restaurant. Thin margins. It's like you're spending like up to an hour with the customer, which means like it's great. If you have a great experience for the customer, it's awesome. But it means you also have like over an hour to fuck things up. So I could have a whole separate podcast about that. But what I'll tell you is like, listen, I've contemplated it more than one time. I don't make a ton of money from the gym anymore. It subsidizes small facets of my life and small facets of my income. But more so than anything else, I just love going there and love the people and love being part of the community. And the fact of the matter is, I can have all that without being the boss, without being in charge of it, without being the owner. And it's probably time for me to hand off the reins. And if you find yourself in that position, right? If you find yourself where you're just like, hey, like it's really not impactful for me financially. It's still taking up some of my time and my effort. But for the most part, like all the meat and potatoes of what's necessary in order for the place to keep running has been offloaded to other people. It's probably a great time for you to consider getting that thing valuated, and potentially looking for somebody to buy that thing so that you can go off and do the next thing, whatever it may be. Maybe it's just retirement. Maybe it's starting another gym. Maybe it's getting into another industry altogether. But it's good to know at some point to be able to like take stock in things and be like, hey, wait a minute, like how necessary am I here? And like, moreover, am I a detriment now? Like, or am I break even in terms of the value that I'm adding? And if the answer kind of like to any of those questions is yes, then like, hey, it's like, just do the diligence, get the business evaluated. Your bank will do it for you more than likely, or at least They'll bring in some hired gun that'll charge you about $1,000 and tell you exactly what your business is worth. And maybe just like go kind of put those feelers out. You'd be surprised. Some joker will come up and offer you like $300,000 for your gym. And when everything's said and done, you'll walk away a little bit richer, refinance your house, take the year off, think about things, sit around smoking cigarettes and drinking martinis after 1 p.m., whatever. But the fact of the matter is you got to have the wherewithal to kind of know, is like, damn, I think I might be ready to step away from this thing. And conversely, right, and in the same vein, it's difficult to know when you should quit. And we've had a couple calls lately, coaching and mentorship calls, where, more often than not, the type of advice we're giving on coaching and mentorship calls is really simple. Like, hey, how do I file my taxes? Or how do I file an LLC? Should I be a for-profit or a nonprofit? Like things that are pretty simple. And in most cases, like things that people are asking early on are the conceptual in nature. But every now and again, we get these questions about when is it time for me to quit, right? Or in some cases, the individual is talking to us and it is time for them to quit and they don't know it yet. Listen, at some point, the thing that you're offering, this business, right, it might no longer be adding value to the consumer. A great example here is like Blockbuster Video. There was a point in my life where I walked into Blockbuster Video and rented a video for the last time, and I didn't even know I was doing it, right? Imagine that. I once heard somebody say that one day your son or daughter will ask you to pick them up, and it'll be the last time that you can pick them up. Like, I want you to imagine that, right? And so because of that, anytime my son asks me to pick him up, I always do it because I know one day it'll just be the last time. And I won't really remember it, right? Because he's too heavy now, or I'm too old, or my son just doesn't want me to hold him anymore because he thinks that's what parents do to babies, and he doesn't want to be seen that way, right? But I remember somebody told me that, and so anytime my son asked me to hold him, I'm like, no problem, dude. But conversely, you're in the same vein, right? It's like at some point in time, I walked into Blockbuster Video, and it was my last time renting a video. And I'm here to tell you, man, you just had to be there in the 90s, right? Early 2000s, like, date night at a certain point in time was just like, hey, let's just make it a Blockbuster night. You're walking into Blockbuster Video, find the new rental, you know what I'm saying? You get a soda and a thing of Mike and Ike's on the way out the door. Let's make it a Blockbuster night. God damn, time of my life. And then at some point in time, probably in like 2007 or something, I walked in to damn Blockbuster Video for the last time. And I never walked in again. Right? That's going to happen for a lot of businesses out there. Somebody's going to walk in there and it's going to be their last time visiting you. And it could be that your business is failing to deliver value for a multitude of different reasons. Blockbuster Video obviously, got destroyed by Redbox, Netflix, and then eventually streaming services that offered the opportunity for you to watch videos directly from your home at any given point in time. AI is obviously going to replace tons of administrative tasks and positions. But look, you have to be diligent at the same time that I was talking about understanding when you as a business owner are no longer either capable of steering the ship or capable of providing value to the organization. It's either time for you to hire somebody else or maybe step away and sell the business. You have to also really be pragmatic about understanding, like, hey, listen, this thing, but I am passionate about this thing. This thing is valuable to me. And almost always great entrepreneurs will start a business venture because it's something that it's fixing a problem in their life. It's this thing that they are passionate about. It's this thing that they love. And they're like, damn, dude, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for a job because I want to do what I love. But you have to take into consideration that you might represent, this solution might be so niche that either it's the market isn't ready for it now, or it might not ever be. This thing might not be a solution for everybody. It's just a solution for you. And of course, there's a million and one different reasons that a business might go under. But this is what I'll tell you: if it's not providing your consumer with value, but moreover, it's no longer providing you with value, right? Like it's not providing you with a paycheck. And this thing starts taking away more than it's giving to you, right? It's taking away from you more than it's giving to you. It might be time to fold up shop. And listen, I never want to tell entrepreneurs to give up. I'm Mr. Don't give up, right? I'm a firm believer that the majority of businesses that go out of business as a result of individuals just not wanting to work hard and giving up. But I think every now and again, the odds might be just supremely stacked against you, whether it's you don't have access to the right amount of capital, you're in the wrong market, or, listen, or it might just be that you need to come up with a better idea. But what I want to tell you is if you do find yourself in that position, it's not the end of the world. And if you truly have an entrepreneurial spirit, there's always going to be space for you to iterate, to improve, and to come up with new and better ideas that you can put a rocket pack on and go off and find yourself in the rarefied air of successful entrepreneurship. So carefully consider things, when you're starting your own business. And then, like I said, understand you could be out in the private sector and get laid off tomorrow. But for whatever reason, when we experience failure through entrepreneurial efforts, it seems so much more acute and so much more personal. But what I want to tell you, it's kind of just like getting laid off. And what I do want to tell you is, listen, just because your first idea doesn't work doesn't mean that the second, third, and fourth aren't going to. And if you ever look at startup trajectory and the percentage of startups that make it, the majority, first and foremost, the majority of entrepreneurs usually fail the first or second time. They're usually not successful until they're like third or fourth time. And as a matter of fact, there's a really interesting bar graph about startups that I saw. It was yesterday. I was like on some goofy Substack that I was reading. But your percentage, right, of success goes up exponentially for every startup that you create, right? And I think it was something like once you're on like between your fifth, sixth, and seventh startup, like your chances of success are like well over 80%, which is like fantastic, right? Like that's a strong percentage for success. But like the percentage for success, like your first and second time, or in some cases like under 5%, like it's like the odds are stacked so terribly against you. So like understand, like no good plan ever survives initial contact. It's like this military term, right? Whenever, and like that's what it's kind of like being in business, being an entrepreneur is like being ambushed, right? You have this great idea, this great plan, spend all this time putting it together. You got a couple homies to the right and left of you that you're super confident about. You're like, dude, we're gonna go out here and rock this thing. And then the claymore goes off, you hear the machine gun fire, and it's a big chaotic fucking mess. Entrepreneurship is just like that. But just like practicing for an ambush, first one seems super chaotic and it's a mess, and you're like, how am I ever gonna wrangle all these people towards this collective effort, this one goal, and find success? But the more you practice and the more you iterate, the better you will get. And I'm here to tell you, just because you're not going to be successful today does not mean that you will not be successful tomorrow. So for the entrepreneurs out there, you feel like you're on your last legs and you're getting ready to fold up shop, don't worry about it. There's always going to be an opportunity for you to do more of the same in the coming days, weeks, months, and years. And like, here's the deal, man. There's organizations like Warrior Rising that are out here that are ready, willing, and able to support you no matter what. To that effect, check it out. Listen, if you're interested in participating in our programs, don't forget to reach out to warriorrising.org. For all the veteran entrepreneurs out there, both big and small, look, I'm proud of you and I'm proud of what you're doing. And I feel really honored to have an opportunity to provide you with some of the experiences and advice that I've received from great mentors and coaches throughout the years. And I'm just so happy and excited that I get an opportunity to be part of your journey in some small way. I really appreciate everybody listening. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Ciao.